Attention, cadets. Formation in 5 minutes. Do not be late. I repeat, do not be late. The announcement blared through the dormitory halls of the Galactic Military Academy, causing Zoran to groan loudly as he rolled off his sleeping platform. Why did they always schedule these mandatory viewings during rest period? It was cruel, bordering on psychological warfare. Then again, this was military training. Hey, Zoran? Ew. Get your 3 legs moving before Commander Pulox adds another cycle to our combat drills, Talia called out, her 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession, a sure sign she was annoyed. I'm up, Zoran muttered, his blue-tinted skin flushing purple with irritation. What's so important they had to interrupt our only break in 14 rotations? Talia shrugged her upper shoulders while her lower arms fastened her uniform insignia, and something about primitive warfare tactics. Apparently we are watching footage from some backwater planets. Rex, their roommate with metallic scales and a notoriously sarcastic demeanor, poked his elongated head through the doorway. Oh joy. Another riveting presentation on how fortunate we are to have evolved past such barbaric behaviors. Nothing like a good dose of superiority complex with our morning nutrition paste. The 3 cadets joined the stream of various species hurrying through the pristine corridors of the Academy. Located on orbital station ZT-9, the Academy served as the training ground for the Galactic Confederacy's future military leaders. 2,000 of the most promising cadets from 500 different species learned everything from strategic theory to advanced weaponry. They filed into the massive auditorium, taking their assigned seats. The buzz of conversations, some verbal, some telepathic, some through color-changing skin patterns, filled the room. Commander Pulox, a towering figure with exoskeletal armor and 4 arms that ended in precision-engineered prosthetics, stood at the center of the stage. His voice needed no amplification system. Silence. Silence. The room went dead quiet. Today we begin a 3-part analysis of warfare methodologies from pre-spacefaring civilizations. Understanding how primitive species conduct war provides valuable insight into psychological weaknesses that can be exploited should diplomatic negotiations fail. Zoran leaned toward Talia. Translation: how to crush bugs that don't know any better. He had Cadet Zoran. Perhaps you'd like to share your analysis with everyone? Commander Pulox's voice cut through the auditorium. No, sir. Sorry, sir. Zoran straightened immediately. As I was saying, the commander continued, we will examine footage from 5 planets whose inhabitants have not yet achieved faster-than-light travel. You will note similarities in their tactics despite having evolved independently. Vex whispered, 10 credits says we start with the gaseous beings from Traxon IV who throw explosive spores at each other. But instead, a holographic image appeared showing a blue-green planet with swirling white clouds. Earth, announced Commander Pulox, third planet, in an unremarkable solar system in the spiral arm of their galaxy. Dominant species humans. Bipedal mammals with average lifespans of less than 100 years. Technological level, primitive nuclear capabilities, early space exploration, rudimentary artificial intelligence. Laughter rippled through the auditorium. Nuclear? They are still using nuclear reactions for energy? Someone called out. I have heard they still use combustion engines for transportation, another voice added. Commander Pulox raised one of his 4 hands for silence. Your derision is noted but misplaced. Earth has been classified as a high-caution world despite their technological limitations. This classification has confused many of our analysts for decades. That got everyone's attention. High-caution designations were rare, usually reserved for species with unpredictable psychic abilities or biological weapons. Why high caution, Commander? Asked Pelora, a top student from the tactical division. They sound harmless. That, said Commander Pulox, is what we are here to understand. We will now view historical footage of human conflicts compiled from their own records. This footage spans approximately 300 of their years. Brace yourselves, cadets. What you are about to see is unusual. The lights dimmed. The holographic display expanded to surround the cadets, creating an immersive experience. The first images appeared primitive humans in formations, carrying metal objects. "This is from what humans call their First World War," explained Commander Pulox. "Note the inefficient use of resources and the primitive weapons." Zoran yawned. This was exactly what he expected: a primitive species fumbling with basic combat principles. Mud, explosions, people running in confused patterns. Their tactics seem random, Talia noted, already taking notes on her datapad. No cohesive strategy visible. "Wait for it," Commander Pulox said quietly. The footage shifted to close-up images of the trenches. The faces of human soldiers, their expressions hollow, their eyes. "What's wrong with their eyes?" Vex asked, leaning forward. "They look broken." "That's the 1,000-yard stare," Commander Pulox explained. "Psychological response to prolonged combat exposure. Humans call it battle fatigue or shell shock. What you are seeing is their minds fracturing under stress." The footage continued, showing increasingly horrific scenes. Gas attacks, bodies tangled in barbed wire, men drowning in mud. The silence in the auditorium grew heavier. They are killing their own species?" Pelora sounded genuinely confused. "Over territorial boundaries? Over imaginary lines on their planet?" "Yes," Commander Pulox confirmed. "And resources. And ideological differences." The footage shifted again. "Second World War," Commander Pulox announced, 20 Earth years after the first one. Now the violence escalated. Massive formations of aircraft, enormous ships firing weapons that could destroy cities, tanks crushing everything in their path. They developed all this just to kill each other more efficiently. Zoran was no longer bored. "They did," confirmed the commander. "And here's where it gets interesting." The footage showed a bright flash, then a mushroom cloud rising over a city. "Nuclear weapons," Commander Pulox stated flatly, "deployed against civilian population centers." Gasps echoed through the auditorium. "They used nuclear weapons against their own species? On their own planet?" Talia's voice cracked slightly. "Twice," the commander confirmed, "in the span of 3 days." The footage continued chronologically, showing conflicts in jungles, deserts, mountains, cities, and weapons became more sophisticated, but the brutality remained constant. "Now we move to their more recent conflicts," Commander Pulox said. "Note the technological improvements, but also observe the psychological constants." The images showed soldiers moving through urban environments, precision strikes, drones, smart weapons. But always, the faces of the combatants showed the same intensity, the same determination, the same broken quality in their eyes. "What you are witnessing, cadets, is what makes humans unique among the species we have encountered," Commander Pulox explained, walking slowly around the stage as the footage continued to play. "Most species develop warfare as a necessity for resources or survival, then progressively abandon it as they advance technologically. Humans have done the opposite. They have refined it, elevated it to an art form." The footage shifted to a new scene: human soldiers caught in an ambush, surrounded, outnumbered, wounded. By all tactical assessments, their situation was hopeless. "Watch carefully now," Commander Pulox instructed. Instead of surrendering the logical choice when defeat was certain, the humans formed a defensive circle. Though bleeding and injured, they fought with increased intensity. Several charged directly into enemy fire to create opportunities for their companions. That's not rational," Pelora said, her voice barely audible. "They are guaranteeing their own deaths. Humans call it fighting to the last man," Commander Pulox explained. "For no man left behind. They will often sacrifice themselves to protect their unit members." "But that defies self-preservation instinct," Talia argued. "No species would evolve to." "And yet they did," interrupted the commander. "Humans have repeatedly demonstrated willingness to die for abstract concepts, countries, ideologies, freedom, their companions. This makes their behavior in conflict unpredictable." The footage changed again. showing combat from the perspective of individual soldiers. The speed of human reactions, their ability to function despite injuries, their adaptation to combat situations, it was all disturbingly impressive. Sir, Vex raised a scaled hand. This doesn't explain the high caution designation. Yes, they are violent and irrational, but they are confined to one planet with primitive technology. What threat could they possibly pose to the Confederacy? Commander Pulox's expression turned grim. An excellent question, Cadet Vex. To answer it, I must show you something few outside the highest military circles have seen. The holographic display reset, showing a simulation. Our predictive algorithms have analyzed thousands of potential first contact scenarios with humans. In 98% of scenarios where conflict occurs, the initial Confederacy force is defeated. Stunned silence filled the room. That's impossible, Zoran blurted out. Our technology is thousands of years beyond theirs. Technology isn't everything, Cadet, Commander Pulox replied. The simulations account for humans' adaptability, their unconventional tactics, their willingness to accept massive casualties to achieve victory, and most importantly, their response to being attacked. The commander gestured, and the simulation played out. It showed Confederacy ships making a standard intimidation approach to Earth. The humans, instead of surrendering as most species would when confronted with vastly superior technology, immediately analyzed the Confederacy vessels, identified potential weaknesses, and launched suicide attacks that sacrificed thousands of their own to destroy key ships. But that's insane, Talia whispered. No rational species would. Exactly, Commander Pulox cut her off. Humans don't approach warfare rationally. They approach it with a fervor that borders on religious. They have developed an entire culture around it. They glorify it in their entertainment. They prepare for it even in times of peace. The footage returned to historical images showing humans training, building weapons, developing tactics, always preparing for the next conflict. In the time humans call the Cold War, two of their largest nations spent decades and astronomical resources preparing for a conflict that never actually occurred, explained Commander Pulox. They built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet multiple times over, as a deterrent. They were willing to risk planetary suicide as a strategy? Vex asked incredulously. They called it mutually assured destruction, and yes, it was their official policy for decades. The commander let that sink in before continuing. But perhaps most disturbing is what our cultural analysts have discovered about human psychology. He gestured, and new footage appeared, humans cheering at combat sports, playing war games, watching violent entertainment. Humans don't just practice warfare, they celebrate it. They simulate it for entertainment. Their young train for it through games. Their history is measured by it. Their heroes are defined by it. Commander Pulox paused the footage on an image of a wounded human soldier continuing to fight despite injuries that would incapacitate most species. What you need to understand about humans is this: they are the only known sentient species that has never, not once in their recorded history, experienced a complete global peace. Not for a single day. Somewhere on their planet. Humans are always at war. Always fighting. Always killing each other. Their entire psychology has evolved around conflict. The lights gradually came back up. Many cadets looked physically ill. Some were trembling. A few appeared fascinated. The high caution designation exists because our analysts believe that if humanity ever unites, if they ever stop fighting among themselves and focus outward, they would become the most formidable military force in the known galaxy, despite their technological disadvantages. They are, in the words of our supreme tactician, natural-born warriors in a way no other species could ever replicate. Commander Pulox surveyed the stunned cadets. Tomorrow we will analyze specific human combat techniques and psychological warfare methods. For now, reflect on what you have seen. Dismissed. As the cadets filed out of the auditorium, nobody spoke. The usual post-lecture chatter was absent. Zoran, Talia, and Vex walked in silence back to their dormitory. Finally, Vex broke the silence. So, That happened. Did you see their faces? Talia whispered. The way they just kept going, even when they should have been dead? Zoran nodded slowly. I always thought I wanted to be a combat officer. Now I'm not so sure. You are not alone. Vex gestured toward a group of cadets heading toward the administration block. Looks like they are requesting transfers out of the combat track. Can you blame them? Talia asked. If those humans ever get proper spaceflight technology. They fell silent again, each contemplating the footage they'd seen. You know what's really scary? Zoran finally said. I think Commander Pulox was holding back. I think the worst footage wasn't shown to us. X's scales rippled in the pattern that indicated deep unease. There's worse? Has to be. Otherwise, why the high caution designation? As night fell on the academy, many cadets lay awake, their minds filled with images of a small blue planet whose inhabitants seemed born for war. And in the administrative offices, the first resignation letters began to arrive. The following morning, the atmosphere in the academy's communal dining hall was noticeably different. Usually buzzing with conversation and the occasional friendly argument over tactical theory, today it felt like a funeral procession. Have you seen the numbers? Talia asked, sliding her tray next to Zoran's. Her 4 eyes blinked asynchronously, a sign of severe stress among her species. What numbers? Zoran pushed his nutrition paste around the plate, appetite completely gone. Transfer requests. Over 200 cadets filed for reassignment out of combat tracks overnight. Another 50 have requested full withdrawal from the academy. Vex joined them, his metallic scales dull and unpolished, something he'd never normally allow. To make that 378 transfer requests. The administration can't process them fast enough. That's almost 20% of the entire student body, Zoran whispered, calculations running through his brain. In one night. Can you blame them? A new voice joined their conversation. Pelora, the tactical division's star student, sat down beside them. Her normal, confident demeanor had vanished, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. I have spent 6 years studying every known species approach to warfare. Everything I thought I knew, humans break all the rules. You are not transferring, are you? Talia asked, genuine surprise in her voice. You are the best tactical mind in our year. Pelora's facial tentacles curled inward, the equivalent of a wry smile. That's exactly why I can't leave. Someone needs to figure out these humans. She almost whispered the word, as if saying it too loudly might summon one. Speaking of which, Vex leaned forward, lowering his voice. Did anyone else notice Commander Pulox didn't show us any footage less than 50 Earth years old? Why, nothing recent. The group exchanged glances. Maybe they have changed? Talia suggested hopefully. Moved past warfare? Or maybe, Zoran said slowly, what they are doing now is too classified for cadets to see. A chill settled over their table. Their speculations were interrupted by an academy-wide announcement. All cadets report to Auditorium A immediately. Repeat, all cadets to Auditorium A. Again? Vex groaned. Did they find more nightmare fuel to traumatize us with? They joined the stream of cadets flowing toward the auditorium. The mood was somber, nervous. Gone was the usual cocky confidence of military cadets who believed themselves the future elite of galactic defense. As they entered the massive room, they noticed something different. Standing alongside Commander Pulox was a figure none of them recognized, tall, slender, with multifaceted eyes and a chitinous exoskeleton that seemed to shimmer with iridescent patterns. Who's that? Talia whispered. Admiral Krav TZs, Pelora replied, surprise evident in her voice. Supreme Commander of Confederate Intelligence. This is unprecedented. Once all cadets were seated, Commander Pulox stepped forward. Yesterday you viewed historical footage of the species known as humans. Your reactions have been noted. He paused, looking around the room. The number of transfer and resignation requests has not gone unnoticed. Uncomfortable shuffling spread through the audience. Admiral Krav TZs has made a special journey to address you directly regarding this matter. This is an honor few cadets ever receive. You will afford the Admiral your complete attention. The Admiral stepped forward, movements fluid despite the seemingly rigid exoskeleton. When the Admiral spoke, the voice was melodious, almost hypnotic, a stark contrast to Commander Pulox's booming authority. Young minds of our glorious Confederacy. I understand yesterday's presentation was disturbing. To see such violence, such apparent irrationality from a sentient species, challenges our fundamental understanding of evolutionary psychology. The Admiral's multifaceted eyes seemed to study each cadet individually. What Commander Pulox showed you was accurate but incomplete. Today I will show you the rest of the picture. Computer Security Clearance Omega-7-3, Authorization Krav TZ Prime. The computer chimed in acknowledgement, and the holographic system initialized once more. What you are about to see is classified Level 10. Outside this room, you will not discuss it. You will not reference it. As far as the rest of the Academy is concerned, this session never happened. The lights dimmed, and a new series of images appeared. Earth again, but different views. Humans are not just warriors, Admiral Krav TZ explained. They are complex. The footage showed humans rushing into burning buildings to save others, humans in white uniforms tending to the sick, humans rebuilding cities after destruction, humans creating art of breathtaking beauty. For every act of violence in human history, there exists an equal act of what they call compassion or heroism. For every weapon they create, they develop a medical treatment. For every destructive impulse, they demonstrate an equal capacity for creation. The images shifted to show humans gathering in enormous crowds, not for war, but in peaceful protest, holding hands across borders, standing unarmed before tanks. Humans possess a duality that our psychologists still cannot fully explain. The same ferocity that makes them terrifying opponents also drives them to protect others at any cost. The same innovation that creates their weapons also solves seemingly impossible problems. The Admiral gestured, and new footage appeared, humans landing on their moon, sending probes to distant planets, creating art and music that even non-humans found moving. They call it humanity, a concept so central to their identity that they named their entire species after it. It's the capacity for both tremendous destruction and extraordinary creation, for both cruelty and kindness in measures that would seem pathological in any other species. Zoran found himself leaning forward, captivated. These couldn't be the same beings they'd seen yesterday, and yet somehow they were. And now, Admiral Krav TZ continued, we come to the real reason for the high caution designation. The holographic display shifted to show a human standing alone against a column of tanks. A single flower placed in the barrel of a weapon, hands raised in peaceful resistance against overwhelming force. Humans fight not just with weapons but with ideas, with principles they value above their own lives. And this capacity to stand unarmed against destruction, to value concepts above survival, this is what truly makes them dangerous. The Admiral's voice grew softer, forcing the cadets to strain to hear. Our analysts predict that if humanity ever achieves true global peace among themselves, if they ever direct outward the same intensity they have historically directed inward, they would become not just a military force, unlike any we have encountered, but a moral one. Their concepts of freedom, self-determination, and human rights would spread through the galaxy like a virus, challenging the very foundations of the Confederacy itself. Stunned silence filled the room. The humans have a saying, the Admiral continued. The pen is mightier than the sword. For most species, this is objectively false. For humans, it has repeatedly proven true. Their ideas have overthrown their own governments more effectively than their weapons. The footage showed humans celebrating the fall of walls between countries, the end of oppressive regimes, the peaceful transition of power after elections. So yes, half of you may wish to resign from military service after seeing humans at war. But I suspect you might all resign if you fully understood humans at peace, their capacity for moral outrage, for sacrifice in service to abstract principles, for choosing death over what they consider oppression. These qualities make them potentially more disruptive to our ordered confederacy than their primitive nuclear weapons ever could be. The Admiral's multifaceted eyes scanned the room. They are quarantined on their planet not merely because they are dangerous, but because their ideas are. Because if our citizens knew that a species existed which fought not just for resources or territory but for concepts like liberty and justice, concepts many of our member planets have sacrificed for security and stability, the resulting philosophical contagion could unravel 10,000 years of Confederate order. Vex raised a trembling hand. Admiral, with respect, are you saying we fear their philosophy more than their weapons? An astute observation, Cadet. Vex, Admiral. Xenobiology track. Cadets. Yes, that is precisely what I'm saying. Their weapons we can counter. Their ideas? The Admiral's exoskeleton shimmered with what might have been a shrug. Ideas have toppled empires throughout galactic history. Pelora spoke without being recognized. But Admiral, everything you are describing, compassion, heroism, self-sacrifice for principles, these are admirable qualities. Why would the Confederacy oppose them? A ripple of agreement passed through the cadets. The Admiral's response was measured. Stability requires order. Order requires control. The human concepts of individual freedom and of self-determination are fundamentally incompatible with the structure that has maintained peace across 500 species for 10 millennia. Then perhaps, Pelora said quietly, we should reconsider that structure. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Such a statement bordered on sedition. To everyone's surprise, Admiral Krav Tez's exoskeleton flashed in patterns that indicated amusement. And that, young cadets, is how quickly the human contagion spreads. One glimpse of their duality, their capacity for both astonishing violence and transcendent moral courage, and already you question the foundation of our society. The Admiral turned to Commander Pulox. You see why I insisted on addressing them personally. The containment breach has already begun. Commander Pulox looked deeply uncomfortable. Admiral, with respect, these are impressionable cadets. Perhaps we should. They are the future leaders of our military. The Admiral cut him off. They cannot be shielded from reality. The better they struggle with these questions now, in the controlled environment of the Academy, than later when the stakes are higher. The Admiral turned back to the cadets. I will now take your questions. Speak freely. This is perhaps the only opportunity in your careers when absolute candor will be not merely tolerated but encouraged. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Zoran stood. Admiral, if humans are, as you describe, capable of both tremendous destruction and moral courage, wouldn't they make better allies than subjects? Couldn't their duality strengthen the Confederacy rather than threaten it? A reasonable question, Cadet. Zoran, Admiral. Strategic Command Track. Cadet Zoran. Your question echoes a debate that has raged in the highest levels of Confederate governance for decades. Some, like myself, believe cautious engagement with humans might indeed strengthen us. Others believe any contact would inevitably lead to the dissolution of our social order. Talia stood next. Have we actually made contact with humans, Admiral? The Admiral's exoskeleton shifted to a neutral tone. Official policy states that Earth remains under observation only, with no direct contact authorized. That's not an answer, Vex muttered, though loudly enough to be heard. Correct, Cadet Vex. It is not. The Admiral's tone held something like approval. More hands went up. More questions followed. With each answer, the Admiral revealed more about humanity, their art, their literature, their philosophy, their contradictions, and with each revelation, the cadet's perspective shifted. Finally, a cadet from the back asked the question everyone was thinking. Admiral, based on everything you have told us, what would happen if humans discovered our observation of their planet? If they learned about the Confederacy? The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Our most sophisticated models suggest 3 possible scenarios. In the first, they would unite in fear and prepare for war, accelerating their technological development with terrifying speed. In the second, they would attempt peaceful contact while preparing for war, the most probable outcome, given their duality. And the third? Commander Pulax prompted when the admiral hesitated. In the third scenario, they would do something no other species in recorded history has done when discovering a more advanced civilization observing them. The admiral's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. They would challenge us not militarily but morally. They would demand justification for our quarantine of them. They would appeal not to our fear but to our conscience. The admiral's exoskeleton rippled in what might have been a sigh. And that, cadets, is why the containment directive remains in place. Because somewhere deep in the Confederate collective consciousness, we fear that if challenged on moral grounds by humans, we might not have an answer that satisfies even ourselves. The auditorium fell silent. Your transfer and resignation requests will be processed, the admiral said finally. But I urge you to reconsider. The Confederacy needs military leaders who understand humans, who can see them clearly, both their capacity for violence and their capacity for moral courage. If when first contact occurs, such understanding may mean the difference between war and peace. With that, the admiral departed, leaving the cadets in stunned silence. Later, in their dormitory, Zoran, Talia, and Vex sat processing everything they'd learned. I'm withdrawing my transfer request, Zoran said finally. Me too, Talia agreed. Vex's scales shimmered thoughtfully. You realize we are being manipulated, right? That entire presentation was designed to challenge us, to identify which cadets would respond with fear and which with curiosity. Of course it was, Zoran shrugged, but the information was real. You saw the footage. I wonder if humans have any idea, Talia mused, that the most powerful interstellar government in the known galaxy both fears and admires them. Probably not, Vex replied with a sarcastic flicker of his scales. They are too busy fighting each other over those imaginary lines on their planet. Creating art that moves even non-humans to emotion, Zoran countered. We're standing unarmed before tanks. Both, Talia said quietly. That's the point, isn't it? They are both. Terrible and wonderful. Violent and peaceful. Practical and idealistic. Human, Vex summarized, the word somehow conveying both criticism and respect. As night fell on the academy, the number of transfer requests being withdrawn began to grow. Not everyone, some cadets remained too disturbed by human violence to continue military training, but many, perhaps even most, found themselves drawn to a new purpose, understanding the paradoxical species called humans, with their wars and their art, their weapons and their ideals, their capacity for both boundless destruction and extraordinary compassion. And in his private quarters, Admiral Krav TZ reviewed the day's recordings with satisfaction. The experiment had worked. The cadets who remained would form the core of a new approach to Earth, neither fear-based containment nor naive engagement, but something more nuanced, but more respectful of humanity's complexity. Because the Admiral had one piece of information even the cadets with their new security clearance weren't permitted to know. First contact with Earth wasn't a hypothetical future scenario.